Good morning. The hearing will come to order. And good morning to everyone. Thank you all for being here, and I would like to welcome my Senate colleagues, Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Blumenthal. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge our visitors present from the greatest state, the state of Illinois. Anyone out there? Yeah? All right. Well, just so you know, when I said this yesterday, I'm from Southern Illinois, which is a little different as far as Illinois is concerned. If you're really from Southern Illinois, you capitalize the S, and it's not a separate state, but sometimes we feel that way. But I want to thank you all for traveling here from Illinois. I know that's not an easy travel. I do that on a regular basis. But if you would, could you just please stand, those of you that can. Thanks for being here. And it is an honor to be here with all of you, my fellow Legionnaires. I'm a Marine veteran, and notice we Marines say that, "Hoorah," right? The Army people, they say that different. But I'm a proud member of Murfreesboro Post 127. And though we're busy, I want to tell you the little neat things about Murfreesboro Post 127. It is the Paul Stout Post. And Paul Stout was actually fought as a Marine. I know this. He fought in Bella Wood. Then he fought in the Battle of Bella. And then he was killed in the next, and he was a private. But on his 100th anniversary of his death, we actually at the Paul Stout Post, because we have a local craft brewery, they made a Paul Stout. And so it was wonderful to do that. So I am very happy to talk to you about my post. Now, before you check, I want you to know I've got my dues paid up. So, just, Commander, no, my dues are paid. All right. You know, the American Legion has a dutiful work on behalf of those who have served our country for more than 100 years, and it is a privilege to be part of that organization. With that being said, I also want to welcome Mr. James LaCourcier, the National Commander of the American Legion, and his spouse, Lisa. Thank you for being here today. I'm looking forward to continuing our partnership to better serve veterans across the U.S. The American Legion does an outstanding job of sharing their perspective and concerns of their members with our committee. Our work here on the committee is greatly assisted by their dedication to the mission. It's an honor for me to be here today, serving as the House Committee Veterans Affairs in the chair. It's my second term as chair, and I never thought this corporal would ever have an opportunity to do that. This mission of the VA committee has always been personal to me. If you were around yesterday when we had the other panels before us, you know that. So my father and his brothers were all Army, Korean War. Had a grandfather who was Navy, Second World War. Had a grandfather who was Marine, Korean War. I had an uncle that was Marine, Vietnam, victim of the ultimate oxymoron, friendly fire. He did survive, and he's doing very well today, thanks to a lot of help from the VA. Then me, non-combat Marine, and my son, who's a lieutenant colonel today, is actually a reservist, but was active for many years. He is a JAG in the Corps. My grandson, who just got out of the Corps, who was an F-18 mechanic. So as you can see, it's really, really personal to me when it comes to our veterans. Now, every time I sit at the dais and we're getting into debate, whether it's with the VA or the other side of the aisle, I'm always thinking of the veterans. And I told this story yesterday, and I'll tell it again to you. If you've ever been around here in D.C. and seen me walking up down the halls or seen me on the floor or seen me here, I wear this bracelet. And this bracelet has the colors of my corps. And it was given to me by a Vietnam veteran. Honest to goodness, he just went by Lieutenant Dan. And Lieutenant Dan gave it to me 11 years ago whenever he found out that I was going to be on the VA committee. And he said, Mike, I want to give you this, and I'm going to give you a couple of them because if you wear them all the time, you'll get them dirty, you'll wear them out. But he said, I want you to wear it because I want you to look down and remember who you're there serving. And that way I don't forget. I don't think I'd forget anyway, but this helps. For me, it's about the veteran. It's not about protecting government bureaucracy. And I know the sacrifices each of you have made. Each of you has fought to protect our constitutional rights. We had many important accomplishments last Congress, but many issues still remain. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to learn more about what we as Congress can help our nation's veterans do. Veterans should have the freedom to use the benefits of VA offered in exchange for their service to meet their individual needs. And they shouldn't be spending hours driving in their cars to get them, or combing through wonky paperwork for months on end, or needlessly waiting for a phone call to get a simple answer. You know where the VA is falling short, as do I. And you know where we need to push the agency to bring it out of the Stone Age and into the New Age. You have my commitment that as long as I'm in charge, we will continue to fight for you and the voices you represent. The hundreds of thousands of veterans outside this D.C. Beltway who just want their health care on time and their benefits when they need them. This old corporal takes this mission seriously. And I know my friend and our new Secretary of the VA, Doug Collins, does too. Under President Trump's leadership, I know we're going to put you, the veteran, and the VA services back at the center of the VA mission. And when the bureaucrats try to get in the way, I will continue to be the first to hold them accountable and get answers for you. We made great progress with the passage of the Dole Act, and I am incredibly grateful to the American Legion for their support in getting this bill across the finish line. And I am committed to improving VA's ability to hold their employees accountable so that the veterans have access to world-class care. I'm grateful to the American Legion for their support of the Restore Accountability Act of 2025, which would do just that. We must deliver for our veterans to protect their health care choice, expand economic and education opportunities, and streamline benefits and get it done. I promise to keep up the fight. We are all in together. Now it's time to it's not time to take our foot off the gas. I look forward to completing our mission alongside of you. Once again, thank you for being here today. And I want to now recognize Chairman Moran for his opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. As I said yesterday, I'm pleased to be with you and my colleagues from the House and the Senate as we examine the desires of a number of VSOs for their agenda for this new Congress. And I thank you for the Commander. Commander, I thank you for your presence here this morning and all the American Legion accompanying witnesses. I recognize the role that the American Legion plays at home in Kansas and here in Washington, D.C. as we advocate for the well-being of veterans today and in the future. And I welcome any Kansans in the audience and welcome Kansans at home who are paying attention to this hearing today. I want to thank the American Legion for their, and many of the folks on the second panel for their support for the Elizabeth Dole 21st Century Veterans Health Care and Benefits Improvement Act. We must make certain that we don't just pass legislation, but it's implemented in a way that actually serves veterans, and we are continuing to make certain that we take every step to see that's the case in this legislation. The American Legion and others testifying here today have also extended their support for the Access Act, the Precision Brain Health Research Act, the Veterans Second Amendment Protection Act, and my National Guard GI Bill Parity Act, all of which have been introduced in this Congress. As I said yesterday, the policies and programs that we will discuss today depend upon a strong and effective workforce at the VA to deliver the care and benefits that veterans deserve. I'm committed to working with the VSOs, with the American Legion and others, and my colleagues on this panel to make certain that the necessary VA workforce is preserved as the VA implements new federal workforce guidance. The VA must be forthcoming and transparent with Congress, with the VSOs, and the public about how it's implementing workforce changes and work to avoid or correct actions that could undermine veteran access to care and benefits. Thank you again, Commander LaCourciere, for being here. I look forward to your testimony, and I yield back.
Thank you, Senator. I'll now recognize Ranking Member Takano for his opening statement.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today, we continue our annual series of joint hearings. I'm pleased to welcome our first panel, the National Commander and representatives of the American Legion, as well as our second panel, representatives from Minority Veterans of America, Jewish War Veterans, the National Association of County Veterans Service Officers, the Military Officers Association of America, National Association of State Directors of Veterans Affairs, the Institute for Veterans and Military Families at Syracuse University, and the Wounded Warrior Project. I'd like to extend this very special welcome to the American Legion's National Commander, James LaCourciere, Jr. from Connecticut, and the National Auxiliary President, Trish Ward from Kansas. Now, before I begin my remarks, I have to ask, are there any Californians in the room this morning? Right on, thank you. You can do better. Well, let's move on. These hearings are important because they're a great opportunity for us to hear from the VSOs about issues impacting veterans in their daily lives. It was at these hearings in 2022 when the VSOs stood in solidarity, calling on Congress to pass the Honoring Our Pact Act. Without you, we would never have passed the largest expansion of veterans' health care and benefits since the Vietnam War. Without you, millions of veterans would still be struggling to access health care for the toxic exposures they experienced in service to our country. And I'll always be grateful to the VSOs for helping us get it done. Now, as I've said all along, the PACT Act was never meant to be a one and done. There's still so much more work to be done because the PACT was not only about toxic exposure. It was also about our promise to ensure that veterans have access to their care and benefits, and that we do everything we can to end veteran homelessness and veteran suicide, address new categories of illness and injury associated with military service, for example, blast injury and military traumatic brain injury. Finally, achieve Guard and Reserve parity, ensure that VA is welcoming to all veterans who have earned the right to be there, ensure that VA's infrastructure can support its mission, and so much more. Unfortunately, I'm not optimistic under this administration. I have grave concerns about how President Trump's executive orders are being carried out across the federal government, most especially at the Department of Veterans Affairs, and how they're going to impact veterans. We learned on Monday that VA indiscriminately fired an additional 1,400 employees. That means we have lost more than 2,400 VA employees just in the last 2 weeks, many of them veterans. And this doesn't just even account for the folks who took the questionable fork-in-the-road buyout offer. I question how purging the workforce, firing the watchdogs, and making VA hostile to certain veterans is helping VA serve veterans better. I think serving veterans is why we are all here. It is certainly why I'm here and why I serve on this committee, because I think there is no higher calling or honor than to serve those who have served. Now, since he was sworn in, I have requested information from Secretary Collins about his implementation of the executive orders and his employment actions against VA employees, none of which he has responded to. This is very troubling. I'm also concerned about the administration's attacks on inclusion and accessibility and its focus on intentional exclusion. President Trump's remarks are making VA a less welcoming place for millions of veterans. In fact, one of his first actions was to close the VBA Office of Equity Assurance, the office tasked with eliminating disparities in the award of disability benefits as a product of discrimination. It is absolutely necessary having a negative impact on access to care and benefits for our nation's most underserved veterans. This administration has turned DEI into a bogeyman to distract from the fact that they have no real solutions to the issues that Americans are struggling with, whether it's eggs and gas are getting more expensive and not cheaper, Medicare and Social Security are at greater risk than ever before, and this administration is too focused on tax breaks for Elon Musk and his billionaire friends to care. Now, the chairman is quick to claim that we want to choose bureaucracy over veterans, and I dispute that claim. What about the veterans who lost their jobs to the Trump administration's indiscriminate firings of federal employees? What about the black veterans who were unable to access VA home loans due to redlining? What about women veterans whose service is still not valued as much as their male peers and are now worried about the loss of gender-specific care at VA? What about the LGBTQ plus veterans whose health is in jeopardy because of the administration's denial of their very existence? Ensuring the institution is there to serve veterans is putting veterans first. It is our job to ensure access to world-class health care and benefits to all veterans who have earned that right, and I take that responsibility very seriously. It is my hope that I can count on the VSO community to help us hold VA accountable to all veterans, and that you will also hold Congress accountable by making sure we walk the talk, that we are carrying out our constitutional oversight responsibilities by asking tough questions, demanding answers, and taking legislative action when needed. We cannot waver in this because we know that veterans are depending on us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member. We now yield to the Ranking Member of the Senate, Mr. Blumenthal, for his opening statement. Thank you for being here again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm honored to be here with fellow Legionnaires. Thank you all for coming today, and the record will reflect that we're standing room only today, and some of the folks who attended had to be siphoned to a different room. Your being here sends a powerful message about how much you care and how you will be a voice for veterans. We can make the speeches from this platform, but you're the ones who get it done, and I'm proud to be a member of the American Legion in Connecticut. Very proud to welcome my fellow Legionnaire, Jim LaCourciere, and your wife, Lisa, and thanks to all of your family. We know that in the military and in the VSOs, families serve, spouses and children serve as well as we do. And of course, to my colleague, Joe Courtney, thank you for being here to do the introductions. We know that service in the military these days is very much a matter of family. Less than 1% of our entire population these days have anything to do with service in the military. My two sons who have served, of my 4 children, my son Matthew, whom some of you know, a Marine Corps veteran, served as an infantry officer in Afghanistan. My other son, Michael, a Navy SEAL. But they come by it because they have looked to you as role models. And I'm very proud to have been in the Marine Corps Reserve myself. Service in the VSOs and advocacy for veterans is a bipartisan task. Let me just stress, it always has been, and it must continue to be. I'm proud to serve with Senator Moran and to introduce with him just recently the National Guard and Reserve GI Bill Parity Act, which would expand the GI Bill's eligibility to Guard and Reserve members. Every day in uniform ought to count for those kinds of well-earned benefits. And with Senator Bozeman, the Caring for Survivors Act, which would increase the dependency and indemnity compensation payments to surviving spouses. We have to continue that bipartisan tradition. And I want to thank the veteran service organizations for blowing the whistle on what is happening these days, literally every day. You heard some of them from Representative Takano, and I quoted yesterday from the Veterans of Foreign Wars, Commander Lippert, who said that the administration is engaged in indiscriminate firing, I'm quoting him, of veterans in the government workforce. I am also calling on VFW members to march forth and join me on March 4th when he will be testifying, and I'm quoting him, "I want to see hats in the hallways of our Capitol as our legislative committee members engage with lawmakers in demanding that they honor the contract the government made with those who have already served and sacrificed so much for America and their fellow Americans. It's time to apply pressure and stop the bleeding," end quote. That's on us, all of us, to be there for our veterans, to be their voice and face in protesting the 2,400 firings that have already occurred at the VA. Across the government, 6,000 veterans have been fired from their jobs in government agencies. Just last night, the Secretary of the VA announced cancellation of 875 contracts worth $2 billion. He began his message, quote, "I got some big news for you," end quote. And then he had a happy talk video, which assured us that no problem, nothing to see here, they're all just consulting contracts. Well, in fact, I have a spreadsheet. I'm going to ask, if there's no objection, Mr. Chairman, that it be made a part of our record.
Without objection.
This is a partial list of those 875 contracts that provide direct service to veterans for cancer care, for recruiting of doctors, for decontamination of facilities that are polluted. This list was provided to my office by officials within the VA. It doesn't contain procurement-sensitive information. It's a description of some of those contracts and input from VA officials on why they are needed to help serve veterans and taxpayers. And I'm asking the Secretary to provide us with a clean copy, full disclosure and transparency. And I will ask that it be made part of the record when it's furnished. I've asked a bunch of questions.
Without objection.
Representative Takano has. I have yet to receive answers. Let me just conclude by saying, and I'm going to quote the VA Secretary in his video, quote, "Don't let nameless sources, even senators and House members who want to scare you and media, who want to perpetuate the line, 'We are taking care of the veterans.'" That is belied by those cuts, by the hiring freezes, by the firings that are occurring in real time right now, and they are having a real impact in Connecticut, where veterans are coming to me and saying, for example, the Veterans Crisis Line has been impacted, making a difference in people's lives, saving veterans from potential suicide. I want to thank all of you for being here today and providing that kind of face and voice, which is so essential to making sure that our veterans are represented, that their interests are protected, and that we stop the bleeding. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ranking Member. Now, once again, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are choosing to put fear over facts. Last night, they erroneously announced that the VA is canceling 875 contracts, hoping to create panic and score political points. Contracts should be reviewed if they are outdated, redundant, or ineffective. That's good government. You want good government. This is about responsible stewardship to each one of you as a veteran who have fought, to make sure that the facilities and the VA is providing for your needs at the best possible dollar, because not only are you veterans, you're taxpayers. Not only are you taxpayers, but you're also this country. You have fought to make sure our country remains free. And if we don't sensibly handle our budget in this nation, and China owns our debt, you will all have fought for naught. Now think about that. Last night, Secretary Collins announced termination of contracts valuing $2 billion. While we do not know the final number of terminated contracts, it is not 875. And reviewing the contract is a best practice that we all should support. You would do it in your household. Why in the world wouldn't we do it at the VA? One, because it usually makes something work better. And two, because it usually makes room for something better to take its place. It's about ensuring every dollar spent by the VA directly supports veterans, not wasteful bureaucracy. And on a couple other issues, when those who have received the slips of being laid off receive those slips, in their slip it says that if you think your job is essential, you can appeal to your supervisor and immediately have a review, and there's due process in place to make sure that no one is lost through that process. And when it comes to the hotline for our veterans experiencing the fear of possibly committing suicide, there were a few backroom employees that unfortunately were included in that list, and they have already been put back on the job. We are doing the thing that we need to do for you as veterans and for you as taxpayers. And with that, we need to move on with the committee. And with that, I want to now yield to our friend and colleague, Representative Courtney, to introduce the American Legion Commander.
Great. Well, good morning, and thank you, Chairman Boss, Chairman Senator Moran, Ranking Member Blumenthal, my friend and colleague from Connecticut, and Ranking Member Takano. And again, it's a great privilege and honor to be here today to introduce the new National Commander of the American Legion, Jim LeCourcier, who is a constituent from Plainfield, Connecticut in the 2nd Congressional District, and also a good friend. We've known each other for many years. It's an exciting moment for Connecticut. It's been 71 years since Legionnaire from Connecticut has held the position as National Commander, and he's somebody who's gotten there the old-fashioned way. He's really earned it. He's an Air Force veteran, served in the 1980s, served overseas in Grenada and Lebanon, honorably discharged, and is, again, after he left the service, began a 27-year journey to get to where he is today as National Commander. His post 91 in Plainfield, Connecticut is a very activist post, very healthy post in terms of membership, put on a lot of veterans events in the district. Actually, Connecticut and Eastern Connecticut has the highest concentration of veterans in New England. We, again, are a district that has the oldest submarine base in America, the Groton Submarine Base, 9,000 sailors and officers. And sometimes people don't think of New England necessarily as a high concentration veteran area, but the opposite is true. And as I said, Jim, both as a local commander and also working in the State Department of American Legion in Connecticut, again, has just been a really passionate advocate for advancing the goals both at the state level in Hartford and here in Washington, D.C. But even more importantly, we've worked together on individual casework with veterans who have been struggling in terms of getting the help that they need. And again, I just cannot think of a better person to really take on the tough job of leading this great organization, the American Legion. A lot of people are very cynical these days, obviously, about Washington, D.C. They think the only way you can ever get anything done down here is by hiring lobbyists or having super PACs. The American Legion is actually the true rebuttal of that in terms of just the grassroots advocacy, with individual members coming to members of Congress office to advocate year in and year out. And again, as we've heard from many of the speeches earlier this morning, I mean, there have been some really tremendous success that kind of defy the conventional wisdom that you can never change anything here in Washington. So again, it's my honor to again introduce and yield to Jim and wish him all the best in terms of his service in the next year as National Commander. And again, I think he's going to do great things for our country. And with that, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Portman. And I would now like to recognize Commander Likorsky to introduce the individuals on the panel.
So Jim is joined today by Julia Mathis from the Legislative Department of the American Legion, Director Cole Lyle from the VA&R, Chairman Jay Bowen, also from the VA&R, Chairman Matt Jabout from the great state of Maine as VE&E, and Director Joseph Sharp, VE&E, and Chairman Matt Schuman of Legislative. And welcome to all of them for being here this morning.
Thank you all for being here. And Commander, you are now recognized for 10 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Boss, and thank you for the very kind introduction, Congressman Courtney. I would also like to give a special shout out to Senator Richard Blumenthal, also from Connecticut. Chairman Boss, before I begin, with your permission, I would like to introduce a few very important people to me.
So,
Sons of the American Legion National Commander Joseph Navarrete of New Mexico. American Legion Auxiliary National President Trish Ward of Kansas. American Legion National Officers serving with me this year. And past National Commanders of the American Legion. And lastly, my incredible wife, Lisa. Chairman Boss, Ranking Member Takano, Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Blumenthal. On behalf of the nearly 3 million members of the American Legion family who proudly serve communities, states, and our nation every day, we deeply appreciate the opportunity to discuss our legislative priorities for the 119th Congress. Your distinguished committees focus almost exclusively on our nation's sacred obligation to ensure that veterans of the United States Armed Forces receive the best health care, disability benefits, and respect they deserve after their service. But what I want to put that obligation into a slightly different context. It begins with military service. We are all aware of the recruiting challenges our branches of service have faced in recent years. One frequently stated reason directly points to our work in support for veterans: a propensity to serve. Military service is an important commitment. A major part of the American Legion's purpose is to make sure that commitment provides worthwhile during and after time spent in uniform. Over the decades, the American Legion has fought to establish and provide continuous oversight for the Department of Veterans Affairs to ensure care for all who have borne the battle. We drafted and fought to pass the GI Bill and to improve it regularly over the years so it stays relevant for new generations, to empower those who served with opportunities to succeed. We created a network of trained, accredited service officers to represent veterans in matters with the VA, to ensure that veterans understand the laws that have been passed to help them with health care and disability benefits they earned and deserve. The American Legion demanded accountability for those who were sickened or died due to toxic exposure. And we worked to reduce any stigma associated with seeking mental health care. The American Legion believes that each one of us can and must be the one to help just one other veteran overcome suicide risk. Peer-to-peer support. Put simply, it's what we do. If we fail to live up to these important covenants, the thanks of a grateful nation to those who have sacrificed so much simply falls flat. Young people who have been told that military service will leave them broken or unsupported in the end will think twice about their propensity to serve at all. And that is a matter of national security. We need to change the narrative. We can change the narrative. Service in the United States Armed Forces is hard enough. That service should not create unnecessary hardships. We stand by federal efforts to create a more efficient, cost-effective VA. We must also look closely at connections that can be made better before discharge, because they weigh heavily on life afterward. Among our legislation priorities, has been the case for many years, is completion and implementation of an electronic health records management system that documents deployment and medical history from the day of enlistment throughout a veteran's life. As Chairman Boss has stated, veterans are also taxpayers, and billions of our taxpayer dollars have been spent on this. The result has been delays, unsuccessful pilot programs, flawed infrastructure, and the continued inability of the Department of Defense and VA to make a transition seamless as possible for those leaving service and entering their lives as veterans. Another concern we hear continuously from the newest generation is the ineffectiveness of an outdated transition assistance program, also known as TAP. Members of the armed forces deserve the chance to convert their military training and skills into meaningful post-service careers. And that takes an effective, outcome-driven TAP program. A program that takes into account all the challenges of transition, from financial knowledge to career opportunity to mental health services. Otherwise, all that training and all those skills that the United States invested in these service members are left behind, when they could be helping drive the United States economy forward. Veterans left to confront difficult transitions without proper preparation are at risk for a number of bad outcomes, not the least of which is suicide. According to the VA's own research, veterans are most at risk for suicide in the first 12 months after discharge. Additional research has shown that financial strain accounts for 20% of the top 20 risk factors for suicide. A hard look at TAP, which needs to begin earlier for those nearing separation, can lead to a stronger model that will ease transition and advance the propensity to serve. Military service becomes more worthwhile pursuit when the rewards of that service are valuable. Chairman Boss, there may be no greater incentive to serve in the United States Armed Forces than the GI Bill. There were 10 planks in the original GI Bill, not just free college tuition. Also included were health care, the ability to affordably purchase a home, business opportunities, and occupational training for the severely disabled so they could re-enter civilian life empowered with purpose. Many said the GI Bill would break the Treasury. In fact, it returns $7 for every taxpayer dollar invested. It built the American middle class, which our nation has enjoyed for over half a century and still enjoys today. And now, as we continue to seek congressional action to provide GI Bill parity for National Guard and Reserve veterans, we must ask, why wouldn't we? All we have is proof that it works. We can change the narrative about the outcomes of military service. We can change it with tangible steps, such as highly efficient VA healthcare and benefit systems that are easier to access and navigate, regardless of whether you live in a big city or in rural Kansas or Illinois, using telehealth, community providers, or traditional VA facilities. Mental health support without stigmatization and advance what we call post-traumatic growth to empower those so effective to not only recover, but to thrive. A TAP program and GI Bill that truly live up to the promises our nation has made to those who have chosen the path of military service. A propensity to serve simply means understanding the value of the commitment I and my fellow Legionnaires in this room have made. It's a lifelong commitment, and we are all proud of our service because we know America is worth it. We are duty-bound as veterans who believe in a strong America, to do all we can to show that worth. In the American Legion, we don't just talk about these issues, we live them. So far, our academic partner, Columbia University, the American Legion have trained more than 12,000 people nationwide to identify risk for veteran suicide and take the right steps to prevent it through our Be the One mission. Last year, American Legion service officers helped more than 1.2 million veterans free of charge with their VA disability claims, resulted in $21 billion in awarded claims to veterans. Each year, the American Legion at the local, state, and national levels is involved with more than 1,100 career events to help veterans and families in transition. The American Legion family also spends millions of volunteer hours and donates millions of dollars annually to support VA facilities nationwide. We also mentor thousands of young people each year and award millions of dollars in scholarships to help them become productive, responsible citizens. And when natural disasters strike, from hurricanes in the Carolinas to wildfires in Los Angeles, our members leaned into harm's way and provide relief. American Legion family, posts, squadrons, and units have been vital partners in recovery from disaster for over a century. Like you, we all took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. We work with our government of this great nation that pledged our lives to defend because we want to see America continue to prosper. On behalf of the nation's largest veteran service organization, I thank you for the opportunity to share these thoughts with you and look forward to working with this new Congress, especially as we draw nearer to the 250th anniversary of our great nation's independence. Chairman Boss, Chairman Moran, I thank you for the opportunity to address your critical committees, and I look forward to answering your questions you or other members may have. Thank you.
Commander LeCourcier, thank you for your very forceful testimony. Thank you for your presence and your colleagues here today. We're going to have a round of 3-minute questions, and I'd ask my colleagues, because of the length of the day, that we work hard to stay within that 3 minutes. And I now recognize myself for that first 3 minutes. Commander, are you hearing concerns from veterans whose conditions are not covered by presumption of service connection, or whose locations or years of service are not included in existing presumptions? If so, are you voicing these concerns to the VA, and what are you being told by the Department of Veterans Affairs?
Chairman Moran, the American Legion cares deeply about this and how it impacts our veterans. But at this time, to give you a more clear response, I'd like to turn it over to Director Cole Lyle of VA&R.
Director?
Thank you, Commander, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. The American Legion obviously lobbied very hard for the passage of the PACT Act. I think the greatest mechanism that the PACT Act created was the ability for the VA to consider new presumptive conditions in a faster, timelier manner, so we don't get into another Agent Orange situation where veterans have to wait years and decades to receive the benefits and health care that they deserve from specific conditions. I am not aware of any specific conditions not currently covered by the list of presumptives under the PACT Act, but I'm happy to take that for the record.
Let me, thank you for your answer. Let me follow up with a reminder that Title II of the PACT Act established a new framework to make decisions regarding new presumptions and of service connection, which hopefully intended to make it easier for non-toxic exposed veterans to file for, receive, and receive disability compensation. Over 2 years after the enactment of the PACT Act, I would ask if the VA is utilizing that process in consultation with you and other VSOs to give you the opportunity to provide that information.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the VA is supposed to have quarterly briefings and updates in collaboration with the veteran service organizations. They have not been occurring on a regular basis, and we have expressed concerns to VA officials about those meetings to continue to have a collaborative discussion on new presumptive conditions.
Thank you. I will do the same thing. Commander, could you speak to the important role that state veterans' homes play in caring for our nation's veterans, and why, at least in my view, it's critically important to increase resources for the creation of new homes as well as renovate and expand existing homes?
Chairman Moran, again, thank you very much for that question. And because the American Legion cares about this with our veterans and how they're impacted by it, for more clarity, I'd like to turn that back over to Director Cole once again.
Director.
Thank you, Commander, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. State veteran homes obviously play a critical role in the long-term care and health services of our nation's veterans. The American Legion will continue to advocate for funding and for the creation of state veterans' homes in support of our nation's veterans.
Thank you. I now recognize the ranking member of the House, Representative Takano.
Thank you, Chairman Moran. Commander LaCourciere, have you seen the VFW statement related to VA's indiscriminate firing of veterans?
Ranking Member Takano, no, I have not read that yet, but I did hear about that, and after this conference, I will look into it, and then I'll discuss it with our DC staff.
Thank you. Do you agree with some of the sentiments in that statement that the loss of thousands of VA employees, many of them veterans, is troubling?
Ranking Member Takano, because the American Legion fights to protect and oversee the care and well-being of our veterans on a daily basis, once again, I'd like to turn this back over to Director Cole.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Cole.
Commander, and thank you for the question, Ranking Member Takano. Obviously, there's a lot of anxiety about this in the veteran community. We, 2 days ago, we held a leadership panel with senior career officials of the VA who actually did express happiness with the liberal exemption policy, as they put it. The firings themselves, we spoke with the Secretary of Veterans Affairs yesterday. Today, our testimony is our statement that we did have a conversation with him and concerns about the clarity in which these firings were occurring, and that we would like to have a productive conversation with him and with your committees going forward about how it would impact veterans. But the career officials that we spoke with, I asked this direct question and said, do you anticipate any impacts of these firings on veteran direct health care and benefits? And they did not express any concern that they would, but we will continue to have productive conversations with them.
What about the veterans themselves who have had stellar performance records, but the memo which stated that they were fired because of their performance is one of the reasons? Do you have any concerns about actual veterans who were dismissed with such memos?
Sir, I am not aware of any specific cases. I'm happy to take that for the record, work with your office on those specific cases. But I will say the American Legion, whether it be government employees or private sector employees, stands ready to assist veterans dealing with unemployment, financial challenges, and other things.
Well, thank you. Mr. Commander LaCourciere, I see in your written testimony the American Legion recognizes the importance of balancing the use of community care with VA direct care, and that VA's aging infrastructure is a contributor to the misbalance we're seeing. How do you think we should address this to ensure that there's always a VA for veterans to go to?
Ranking Member Takano, in all respect and to save on time, I'm going to turn that over to Director Cole again, please.
Thank you, Commander. Community care and the codification of access standards, I think the American Legion thinks is the right way to go to ensure veterans can get the care they need when they need it. I think to a large extent, infrastructure obviously plays a huge role in the VA's internal capacity to be able to care for them. And we have expressed a desire for increased appropriations for major and minor construction, an increase in flexibility of leasing, so that the VA is able to handle, preferably get the care at the VA rather than sending them out into the community. But ultimately, the veteran must come first, and that decision must be between a veteran and their provider based on their best medical interest.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I quoted earlier Secretary Collins, who said that you should disregard senators and House members who want to scare you. We're telling you the truth, and it is scary. And I urge you to ask for the facts about those VA employees who've been fired, employees with years of service who have good performance reviews. And more important than even their fate, they serve veterans. They are the ones who process those benefits under the PAC Act. One of the most common constituent complaints I receive, and you as Legionnaires, probably with your fellow veterans here, is the delay in processing benefits. These are not gifts. They are not charitable handouts. You've earned them under the PAC Act, under all of the government programs that keep promises to you. The VA is breaking those promises, and it isn't even the VA, it's Elon Musk, who is using algorithms and AI formulas. His tech bros are applying them to decide, well, so-and-so is dispensable, this benefits processor, these doctors. We need to reestablish the kind of oversight and supervision that they are eliminating through abolishing and firing the inspectors general. I want to thank you, Commander, for your testimony. Quote, the hiring freeze has the potential to impact millions of veterans, particularly those waiting on adjudication of claims post-PAC Act. That indicates to me that you share this concern. Do you know of veterans, Commander, who have been delayed in terms of benefits received?
Ranking Member Blumenthal, thank you very much for that question and everything. That is a topic that we are very concerned about because we do care about the well-being of our veterans and their families. But at this time, once again, I'd like to defer it over to Director Cole.
Thank you, Commander. And thank you, Ranking Member Blumenthal. We, again, spoke with those VA officials and raised similar concerns. I know last year, VA officials said that they were aiming at VBA and the Board of Veterans' Appeals to get back to pre-pandemic levels by the end of 2025. I asked them, in consideration with all the personnel changes, the hiring freeze, return to work, all of them, if they anticipated any negative effect on veteran benefits, and they indicated that it would not affect their ability. They said that that goal to get back to pre-pandemic levels by the end of this year was still the target.
Well, let me suggest that you apply a high degree of skepticism to the happy talk and smiley faces of the VA, who obviously have a party line to espouse, and talk to your members, talk to veterans, talk to real people who are suffering real impacts, not just on the processing of benefits in a timely way, but also Veterans Crisis Line that save people from suicide, recruiting of doctors. There are shortages, I'm willing to bet, in most of your VA facilities, doctors and nurses. They need to be recruited and retained. Go down the kinds of services that are essential to health care and benefits. You can't fire 2,400 people without there being an impact. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Radewagen of American Samoa is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman and ranking members. Talofa lava. I want to thank you for holding this important hearing today, as well as thanking the panel for being here. Thank you for your sacrifice and service to our nation. And my home district is almost 10,000 miles from Washington, D.C., so I'm just wondering if we have a veteran or two who has traveled all the way in from the Pacific Islands. Probably not, but I thought I'd ask. All right. Thank you so much. I wanted to say that just a few weeks ago, I traveled by car down south and visited 8 military installations. And I also invited the American Legion to come along. And so we were able to visit 9 American Legion posts, and I was honored to spend time and have little town hall meetings along the way with hundreds of veterans. And so I want to thank your leadership for helping to put this together. And my special thanks to American Legion's Ariel de Jesus for accompanying my husband and me on this rather lengthy trip. Commander LeCourcier, the American Legion supports the Restore VA Accountability Act of 2025. Why is it important to provide additional tools to address poor performance and ensure that VA is serving all veterans with the highest standards? Commander?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Radewagen. The American Legion, once again, we do care about the care and well-being of our veterans. I'd like to turn this back over to Director Cole again.
Thank you, Commander, and thank you, Congresswoman. I know that Ariel very much enjoyed his trip with you through those states' 8 military bases. The American Legion has several resolutions in support of accountability and efficiency at the Department of Veterans Affairs. We believe that the VA should be an agency that is accountable to the veterans that it serves. We know that last year, the Office of Inspector General produced 100 and some odd reports to the tune of about $9.2 billion in monetary impact. So we know that it exists. There's efficiencies to be made, and we have supported the Accountability Act in the past.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Tillis is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for your service and continuing to serve. I think it was Senator Blumenthal that said that real people are suffering with real impacts. Did that just start 3 weeks ago in the VA? Real people suffering real impacts? Or do we have unacceptable wait times and fewer options for members who are in stress? So in other words, is this a new phenomenon, or do we have work to do that predated the transition? Commander.
Senator Tillis, thank you very much for that question and everything. And I'd like to start by just saying that any wait time
Is unacceptable.
is unacceptable.
It was an unfair question because
but we would like to respond to that
Yep.
in a professional manner from the American Legion.
Well, good. Let me just revise it. What I'm particularly interested in, I don't know, and like I said yesterday in the DAV hearing, that I'm a very boring management consultant that's driven by facts. So what I want to know is of the terminations that we have seen, or the separations today, have they been stratified in a way to where I know if they're physicians, physical therapists, nurses, people on the front line, critical positions, if they're in the customer-facing organization. I'm asking for that information, and if we found some bad separations, I'll make it known. I'm just wondering whether or not y'all have access to that information yet. And Ms. Mathis, I'll leave it to you.
Thank you, Senator Tillerson. Thank you, Commander. We do not have that information in hand right now. We have intention to be in close dialogue with the VA, but also with the veterans to find out exactly what the issues are and to monitor what will be the impacts. It does matter to us.
I want that as quick. I mean, you've got the eyes on the ground, and if there is a personnel separation that has had an appreciable impact on serving veterans, then I'll be the first one to go to the Senate floor and say this has to stop. But what I think is unhelpful is when we just have this incoming going in every direction. People are only talking about the top-line political comments that get you on TV. They're not talking about trying to measure whether or not there are real impacts that we need to worry about, whether or not we need to communicate that if there are any further reductions in force or realignments, we need to be advised on it very, very quickly. So I would really, you all are an extraordinary organization. I see some familiar faces and friends here at the dais that I wish I had more time to speak with. But as we go through this transformation, I'm holding out the hope that this is all about getting the most critical people, the most important service levels for veterans improved. There's a thesis here that this is somehow, and it just seems odd for me to accept just on its face, that this is all with an intent to degrade opportunities for veterans to get a receipt, get another payment on a debt we can never repay. Why does anybody think that that is politically or operationally sustainable? So to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that want to focus on the top line, that's fine. We're in a committee hearing. There are TVs on and cameras on. But behind the scenes, why don't we look and really determine to what extent, if any, these reductions are having an appreciable impact on the service levels that I believe that every veteran deserves. They should be top quartile. And I thank you all. As you get information, make sure you report back to me. God bless you all. And anybody in and around North Carolina out there? There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Congressman Conaway, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Well, I think I just realized how to recognize someone from North Carolina. Thank you, Chairman Bost, and thank you certainly to the American Legion. As a fellow Legionnaire, I'm certainly very pleased to be with you today. As a doctor, I'm troubled and greatly disappointed by the actions taken by the VA to terminate nursing assistants, supply technicians, schedulers who support doctors in their work and their shared work to provide life-saving treatment to veterans. Without adequate support staff, physicians will be overwhelmed with scheduling, paperwork, and other administrative tasks, leaving them with less time to care for veterans. And we've heard that we've lost a contractor that had great success in recruiting much-needed physicians into the VA workforce. And of course, these terminations go to the very heart of the wait times that all of us find so unacceptable. My staff met just yesterday with employees who worked as trainers for the many persons who were discharged, terminated from the Veterans Crisis Line. Now, we know, and we've heard testimony, written testimony from Commander LaCourciere, that we're seeing marked increases in the use of the Veterans Crisis Line. Many calls are coming in today, and I heard in my office just yesterday from local American Legionnaires about the 22 men that we're losing and women that we're losing every day to suicide. So it's particularly concerning to hear about and understand that these cuts have taken place. So could you elaborate, Commander, on the implications of understaffing the crisis line, and what impact do you think these cuts are going to have on veterans and family, not only in the crisis line, but in these critical service areas that support the work that the VA does to provide life-saving care?
Congressman Conway, thank you very much for that question. As we stated earlier, the American Legion, we do care about all of our veterans, but we also care that they get the proper care in a timely manner that they deserve. And we need to continue the peer-to-peer support and making sure that they have the right tools that they need with health care. We are aimed and focused on reducing veteran suicide. Every suicide matters. We care about that. That's why we have our Be the One mission. But to give more definition to your question there, I'm going to turn it over to Director Cole. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commander. And thank you, Congressman, for the question. As the Commander stated, suicide is one of the American Legion's top priorities with the Be the One mission. We at local posts don't hear, we hear often from veterans who have been personally affected by this. So it's something we're very passionate about. I would say in terms of the Veteran Crisis Line, we did hear about the 2 employees that were fired and then reinstated 2 days later. There have been some concerns about how some of the executive orders work in concert with each other. For instance, the hiring freeze, VCL, crisis responders were exempted, but return to work was not exempted, which will make it harder for the VA to hire those folks. And they'll have to potentially take silent monitors, what are called silent monitors, and place them as crisis responders. So there could be a capacity issue. We have not seen anything currently, and we are working collaboratively, and we will communicate with the department and with your committees about this issue going forward.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Hassan, you are recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to our chairs and ranking members. I'm grateful for this hearing, and Commander and all of your colleagues and all of the veterans in the room, welcome. I honor my dad's World War II service and his memory by being a member of the auxiliary, so thank you for welcoming me to that as well. And any Granite Staters out there? Anybody from New Hampshire? Excellent, thank you, and welcome. And look, I don't have a question about the recent events at the VA. I will just say this. First, the administration fired the Inspector General at the VA. Then they laid off 2,400 people. Now we're seeing all of these contract cuts that may, in fact, impact essential services to veterans. My job is to ask why, and my job as a former governor is to say you don't make indiscriminate cuts, you don't churn employees, you don't just do categories of cuts willy-nilly. You study, you look at ways you can coordinate and streamline services, and you look at the impact before you make this kind of layoff and take these kinds of actions. And the Inspector General, of course, is the person who's charged with going after waste, fraud, and abuse, and to fire that person right away is really troubling to me. So I hope we will have some more transparency. I hope the Secretary will come, and I hope he will explain what they have done and why he thinks it's good for the VA and, more importantly, good for our veterans. Commander, I did want to ask about improving VA facilities. I want to start by thanking the American Legion for your continued advocacy on behalf of all veterans. In your written testimony, you discussed the fact that the VA medical facilities are on average roughly 60 years old and in need of significant repairs. That's something we're very familiar with in New Hampshire. The Manchester VA Medical Center is almost 75 years old, and twice in the past 8 years, pipes have burst in the medical center, causing significant damage and delay of care for veterans, cancellation of entire procedures. I've worked with the VA to help address this issue, and I'm going to keep doing that, but we all know veterans in New Hampshire, veterans around the country deserve the best care at the best facilities. They've earned that. So, Commander, can you please discuss the need for robust commitment to improving VA's infrastructure and how that will benefit veterans?
Ms. Hanson, thank you very much for the question and the statement as well. The American Legion, we do truly care about the conditions of our facilities because that affects the well and care being for our veterans as patients and everything. And that's the reason the American Legion, we have the system we're saving. But to give more defined answer, I'd like to turn it back over to Director Cole again.
Thank you, Commander. And thank you, Senator, for the question. Obviously, the infrastructure problem in recent years has been exacerbated by community care in the sense that more veterans are eligible to receive care in the community because the VA can't provide the care in a certain reasonable time or distance. Preferably, the VA is a one-stop shop for veterans, and VA facilities that are in need of modernization should be modernized. I think historically the recent administrations have submitted budgets to Congress in the neighborhood of $2 to $3 billion for major and minor construction infrastructure projects.
Yep.
And obviously, in a budget-constrained environment, the VA has to make some choices about where that occurs. So I think there's definitely room for improvement in terms of Congress's commitment to VA infrastructure, particularly with codification of access standards.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Chair, I'll follow up with the witnesses about some issues with CMP exams that I know we're all concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Hamanay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as a member of the American Legion Post 107 in Phoenix, Arizona, it's an honor to be with all of you here today. And I know you're continuing your service by being a voice for so many veterans, so thank you all for coming, and thank you for all the volunteers. Now, Commander, President Trump, in his last administration, championed veterans' choice in health care, and I know it's a top priority in his administration right now. But we continue to hear stories about veterans facing long wait times and denials for community care. How can the VA ensure bureaucrats can't arbitrarily deny veterans their right to seek community care?
Thank you, Mr. Robinette, for that question and everything. Because we do care about the care and well-being of our veterans and everything. That is a priority topic for us and everything. But for more clarity, I'd like to turn it over to Director Cole.
Thank you, and I am actually going to defer to my chairman, Chairman Jay Bowen.
Thank you. Thank you, Cole, and thank you, sir, for the question. We certainly do care about ensuring our veterans get the care that they need, when they need it, and where they need it. That's priority one for the American Legion. And if that's through community care, that's good, as long as we have the VA providing the oversight necessary to ensure that the standards are kept.
And what are you hearing from veterans about their ability to access mental health care in their communities under the VA's current approval process?
We're hearing very good and not so good. It just depends on the region of the country and the VA medical center in the community care area. It's probably like any other place, and civilian care too. You can hear very good and you can hear very bad. When we hear anything that is not up to standards, we certainly investigate, and we work towards getting that fixed, working with the VA to get that done.
Right, but it's, you know, veterans should be treated well no matter if they're from the inner cities or from the suburban areas or from rural areas. And I think we need to make sure that we have a common standard across the country. And I know that's a top priority for you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. Now recognize a person that formerly was in the House and served on our committee in the House, but now is in the Senate, and he looks really good in the Senate. And my neighbor, Senator Banks. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's an honor to be back, and it's an honor to be the first Hoosier to serve on the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee in a long time. So I spent 6 years serving with Chairman Boss. Thank you. And I want to thank all the Hoosier Legionnaires who are in the room. Thank you for coming all the way from Indiana to be a part of this hearing. And to all of you, when you come and educate us on your priorities, it helps us fight hard to make sure that our nation's heroes get the service that they have earned from this country. And your work here today helps us in a big way to do that. Mr. Commander LaCourciere, as you know, Indianapolis is going to be hosting the National Veterans Creative Arts Festival in May, presented by the American Legion and the VA. This festival is a great opportunity for veterans to showcase their work, and these creative projects are an important part of many of our veterans' rehabilitation. Can you tell us more about the event and the value that it provides?
Senator Banks, thank you very much for that question. The Creative Arts Festival is actually a very huge highlight. You know, it brings out the best of our veterans that sit back and they use their creativity in various facets, whether artistic, painting, playing a piano, whatever the case may be. It's another form for them of their therapy that they must need to decompress and deal with mental health in various aspects. Mental health, as we all know, is a very large scope. And if they can sit back and find a way to tunnel it in, in their way without using drugs, anything, or anything along that scope, because we sat back in the years back, we sat back and we medicated our veterans. They came home, they'd seek mental health assistance, they'd go to the VA, receive a bottle of pills, and be sent home. That's not cutting it. We want our veterans to be able to think clearly, but we also want them to survive. They can help us grow the economy by being on this side of the earth. So yes, the American Legion's Creative Arts program, to me, is a very high profile and great program because it's for all veterans.
Very, very well put. Indiana is very proud to host this event in May, and we thank the American Legion for providing that opportunity for our nation's veterans. Look forward to highlighting it. Thank you for choosing Indianapolis as the destination for that event in May. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Senator. We now recognize Congresswoman Sheffis McCormick for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to start by echoing the comments that I made yesterday. Any cut that has the potential to hurt just one veteran must be taken off the table immediately. Our veterans deserve better than to be collateral damage from hasty cost-cutting measures, such as misguided efforts with not only burden American taxpayers with greater expenses, but also deprive our brave men and women of the services that they rightfully deserve. Let's prioritize our veterans and ensure that they receive the support and the help that they've earned. For example, to take the Veterans Crisis Line last week, it was reported that DOJ fired employees who worked the Veterans Crisis Line and then subsequently scrambled to rehire them. In fact, a large majority of our Veteran Crisis Line workers are, in fact, veterans themselves who have lost their jobs. This, to me, is appalling and ridiculous. Mr. LeCroussier, is firing workers for the Veterans Crisis Line in line with your recommendation under the B1 campaign to train 100,000 people in suicide prevention?
Ms. McCormick, thank you very much for that question, because we do care about our veterans and everything, but I also want to not waste your time. I'll give you a clear answer. I'm going to turn that over to Director Cole, please.
Thank you, Commander, and thank you, Congresswoman. There's been a lot of changes very quickly in the last month. We're encouraged that all critical essential personnel have been exempted, and the VA's 4 agencies have assured us that the exemption policy is very liberal. If a supervisor at the VA sees one of their personnel in a mission-critical position, that they have the ability to go to leadership and that position to be exempted. I think VHA's 300,000 so far. VCA has 15 occupations dealing with families and maintaining cemeteries. Particularly with the Veterans Crisis Line, it's a critically important tool for crisis intervention to attack the veteran suicide issue. And we have not heard of any direct impacts to veterans based on the personnel actions by the administration, but as we mentioned earlier, we are closely monitoring those, and we will work with this committee and with the VA to ensure that there is no direct harm to veterans.
Now, do you believe we should be investing more in growing the actual staff to deal with the Veterans Suicide Prevention Line and to deal with veterans' health, mental health?
Thank you, Congresswoman. Yeah, I think the Veteran Crisis Line is an important tool in crisis intervention, but I think the broader problem of suicide prevention, the point of Be the One, is to get non-traditional approaches, upstream problems solved before the veteran even gets to that crisis point. So I think our efforts are focused in Be the One and more broadly in government policy to ensure that the VA is starting to attack those upstream problems like financial stress, relationship stress, housing, transportation, things like that, before it gets to the point where they need to call the Veteran Crisis Line or they need to go to the emergency room for an emergency mental health appointment.
So if I may add to that, ma'am.
Yes.
We are also very engaged in growing peer-to-peer support, and we are also, the American Legion very much supports the Fox Grant Program for these alternative methods, community-based methods to get veterans who are in crisis or perhaps maybe just foundering a little bit, connected with other veterans who can help put an arm around them and maybe bring them back to a little bit safer ground. We are a big fan of the veteran-to-veteran and peer-to-peer support. So whatever programs that these committees can support to do that, we will do our best on this side to push that out to the greatest reach we can get. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for your service and for being here. And we're committed to make sure we're investing in those programs that would help all of our veterans. Thank you very much.
Senator King, you're now recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you. The first thing I want to do is thank everyone for being here. The Legion has never had a more important moment than this one. To defend our veterans, to defend the Veterans Administration, to defend the service that's being provided to veterans. We need your voice. Yes, it's early in this process. We don't know where it's going. We don't know how many more firings there will be. You've got to let us know what's going on the ground. That's a very important role that you have. And Matthew, I'm delighted to see Maine at the table. Thank you for being here, sir. Let me put this into a little bit of perspective. We know we've had 2,400 firings in the last 2 weeks, but don't forget we had a hiring freeze, and with normal attrition, we probably lost another 2,000 people. So we're really talking about almost 5,000 people out of the VA service. And it bothers me when people talk about bureaucrats. They say, we're going to protect the doctors, and we're going to protect the direct service workers. If nobody's there to answer the phone when a veteran calls for an appointment, that's a denial of benefits. And so this idea that bureaucrats aren't important really galls me. And the secretary the other day said, after all these cuts, in fact, veterans are going to notice a change for the better. It reminds me of the old country song, who are you going to believe, me or your own lying eyes? I want you to tell us what's actually happening. The PACT Act backlog is not going to be helped by removing people who are in the service of other veterans. Now, I do want to talk about transition for a minute. Be the One is one of the most important initiatives going on in the country right now. Thank you for staffing that, for setting it up, and for making it actually happen. I've thought... I have a simple formula for transition. I think the Defense Department should spend as much money on transition as they do on recruitment. And one of the things that we're working on here is something called the TAP Promotion Act, which would bring VSOs into the process of the transition. We've got to have a warm handoff. I think you quoted a number. The bulk, not the bulk, but a very large percentage of the suicides are in the first year or two after transition. That's a place where we really need to give some effort. Commander, tell me about how important you think transition is.
Mr. King, thank you very much for that question. The TAP program is very critical. It's a very important element in that they get their full 365 days to transition and educate themselves on it. As we all know, the more knowledge you have, and it gives you a much better sense of direction on where to go for what you need, but it also steers you in the right direction for gainful future employment, As we all know, employment, also stirs you in the right direction for stability with your family, and it also helps drive the economy forward. Too often, we sit back and they don't know where to go for assistance when they get out of the military. I'm not just saying that the second you get out of the military, you need assistance, but down the road, you may need that assistance. They need to be forwarded all the tools and resources where they go. They'll even get a start in their next career, as they take off the uniform.
Well, my vision is someone meets you at the airport when you come home and says, welcome home. Here's what the VA can do for you. Here are the programs. Give me a call if you need any help. That's where things like the Be the One program can make such a difference. Thank you again for what you're doing. Be our eyes and ears. Let us know what's happening out there so we can protect and defend the most sacred obligation this government has, which is to its veterans. Thank you, Commander.
Thank you. Dr. Miller-Meeks.
Thank you very much, Chairman Bost, for holding this meeting. Thank you to all of our witnesses. As a 24-year military veteran, married to a 30-year military veteran whose father was Air Force. 5 of her siblings were either in the Army, the Air Force, or the Marines. I thank you all for your service and the ability for you all to be here, defend our democracy, and allow us to actually have this hearing today on what we're doing for our veterans and the debt of gratitude that we owe them. Let me just ask a question. Are you all glad the kiosks are coming back? It's one of the times when, people in Washington, D.C. don't listen to their veterans, plan a program, and then find out that it backfires on them because what they thought was a good idea really wasn't a good idea for the population that we serve. I've heard a lot about them, so we're glad that the VA has reconsidered. Ms. Mathis, let me also thank you for mentioning the Fox Grant program. It's a program that the bill that I'm sponsoring as chair of the Health Subcommittee, one of those things that it's very important, and your mentioning of the peer-to-peer support. And I say this, we have a Quad City Veterans Outreach Program in Davenport, Iowa. So these are veterans serving veterans or family members of veterans serving veterans who has done a great job in allowing a platform for veterans to come and just talk to other veterans. And I thank you for underscoring the importance of that. And then, Mr. LeCourcive, you mentioned on suicide prevention and how challenging it is. And can you ask or tell us, what other things do we need to do in Congress to help you all? And did you think it was appropriate? We had a health subcommittee hearing here and found out that the VA did not consider residential mental health care or residential substance abuse disorder treatment to fall within the 30-day window or 40-mile window of the Mission Act. And so these patients were refused. Did you think that's something that helps us to deter, suicide and also treat PTSD or substance use disorder?
Doctor, thank you very much for that question. As we did mention earlier, the American Legion, we truly do care about every life of a veteran and the care and well-being. Suicide is something that we truly take to heart, and we're trying to monitor that. But to give a direct answer to you, I'd like to turn it over to Director Cole.
Well, thank you, Commander. I think in our testimony, and the American Legion's efforts in Be the One, there are several changes. I think the Fox Grant program is a great example of a program that gives resources to local and state-level organizations that may not be suicide prevention per se, but they help attack those upstream problems that financial assistance that I mentioned earlier. I think programs like that, but I also think that the American Legion thinks that we should look at suicide prevention just differently. Right now, the Office of Suicide Prevention is housed within the VHA and mental health, and the VA says it's their #1 clinical priority when we know that there are a lot of things at the Veterans Benefits Administration that directly touch on a veteran's spiral to a crisis point. So there are several recommendations that we have. We're happy to follow up and work with your office to address this problem.
Thank you very much. I know my time's expired, but let me just say I thank all of the VSOs and all of you here for being our eyes and ears on the ground. And the number of lives you've saved from suicide among our veterans is uncounted and unknown. So thank you very much. I yield back.
Thank you. Dr. Dexter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the ranking members for convening this important hearing. Thank you to our witnesses for being here and for continuing to advocate for our veterans. I echo my colleagues' words of how important it is right now in this moment that we hear from you. And just as a physician who served in the VA, took care of patients in the VA for years, I'm deeply grateful for the work that you are continuing to do. Last Congress, thanks to your tireless advocacy, the Senator Elizabeth Dole 21st Century Veterans Healthcare and Benefits Improvement Act was passed, a major step forward on many fronts, including in tackling veteran homelessness. Over the past 15 years, federal investments have cut veteran homelessness in half, but our work clearly isn't done. Last year, nearly 34,000 veterans in the U.S., including more than 1,400 in my home state of Oregon, were still without a home. Just last week, I held a roundtable with veterans, VA leadership, and advocates in Oregon, and effectively addressing houselessness and mental health are their two top priorities. The Dole Act increased per diem rates for transitional housing and ensured the VA could provide basic necessities like food, transportation, and hygiene products for our unhoused veterans. These are essential life-saving provisions, yet Congress has failed to fund them. Commander LaCourciere, can you speak to how impactful it would be to fully fund the Dole Act programs for veterans experiencing homelessness?
Doctor, thank you very much for that question and everything. And yes, the American Legion, we're ecstatic to see the Dole Act get across the hurdle and everything. When it comes to veteran homelessness, we care about veteran homelessness as much as we do about veteran suicide. But veteran and homelessness are two words that should never, ever be used in the same sentence. You're talking about the troops that protected and served for this country. And almost every veteran that's ever served this country will continue serving the country even after they take the uniform off. So we are trying to do everything we can to help reduce, well, let me take that word back, to eliminate veteran homelessness.
Thank you.
And yes, we will do anything we can to work with your committees and work with Congress. And like I said in my testimony remarks, we're here to work with Congress. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Commander, and I couldn't agree more, and that's exactly the sentiment I heard back in Oregon, that we must end veteran homelessness. So we have a bipartisan majority who are in agreement that these programs are necessary. We passed the bill, but we still haven't found the impetus and the prioritization successfully to actually fund it, and that's unacceptable. We must agree that housing is a fundamental right. As you said, no veteran who has served this country should ever be at threat of being houseless. So I hope that my colleagues can stand with us to make sure that we end this and prioritize our veterans over potentially taxpayer or tax breaks for millionaires. We have the resources. We just need the political will. Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We now recognize the senator from Illinois, Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When my colleagues and I passed a PACT Act in 2022, we helped create the largest expansion of veterans benefits in decades. But I remember when I was State Director of Veterans Affairs, and I just been appointed to that position, and I had one of the pilots that was a Vietnam pilot, Vietnam veteran, who was dying from Agent Orange-related exposure. And I did everything I can to try to get him his benefits. This was a man who used to give me check rides and terrified me. Because the pilots, the Huey pilots who got back from Vietnam, they knew what they were doing. And they didn't take guff from us young bucks. And he used to terrify me annually when he would give me my check rides. But I remember trying so hard to get him his benefits, and he ended up dying before he received his benefits, and we were able to get benefits to his spouse. But it were not for you. If it were not for VSOs fighting for our Vietnam veterans, we would never have passed the presumptive conditions that then set up the stage for the PACT Act. So I just want to tell you how critically that fight was for over 40 years. And the key to that is the fact is that with the PACT Act, we think we're adding benefits now. We think we know what those conditions are now. But I'm going to tell you that some of these conditions are going to take 20, 30, 40 years to manifest themselves, like they did with Agent Orange exposure. It's going to take a while for neurological conditions. It's going to take a while for some of this. It may be 20, 30 years after exposure before the veterans are showing signs of their toxic exposure. So that is why it is so critically important that we get veterans enrolled and get them into the system. I remember flying into Baghdad, and we two pilots would take turns holding our breath because that scuzz layer of polluted air above Baghdad was so toxic it would burn my lungs, and we would actually, our eyes would water coming in for landing. I remember thinking, man, those poor suckers down there, what are they living under? But then I lived in Balad, downwind from the burn pits. And so I'm here because you have always been at the forefront, forcing this nation to live up to our promises to veterans. But I will tell you that right now, President Trump and Elon Musk firing all of these Veterans Affairs employees is not helping the case. And I know the Secretary of Veterans Affairs came out and said that no VITO employees were fired. I personally took care of 2 Veterans Crisis Hotline employees who were fired and worked hard to get them reinstated. They were fired on Valentine's Day. These are people who were answering the phones. And now I just heard another case yesterday of another crisis line employee who was fired. This was a supervisor, somebody who did a good job and was promoted to help train other crisis hotline employees. And because of that, they're probationary in that new position. So they were just fired. We cannot let that happen. Mr. LaCorsari, did I say that correctly, Mr. Commander, that's way better. Commander, in your assessment, how would the firing of so many employees from the VA affect your members?
Senator Duckworth, thank you very much for that question and the details you just laid out before us. I would like to turn this over to our Director, Cole.
Sure, of course.
Thank you, Commander, and thank you, Senator. Good to see you again.
Yes.
I think there's been a lot happening recently, quickly. I think every few days we're learning about something new and trying to determine how it will potentially impact veterans and have any negative impact so that we can assist this committee and the VA in mitigating those impacts to veterans, specifically with the Veteran Crisis Line or other critical mission essential to make sure that veterans are getting the care they need when they need it. We were encouraged about the number of exemptions that the VA announced for the VHA, the VBA, and the Board of Veterans Appeals. We've also been told by career officials at the VA, not politicals, that they were happy with what they called a liberal exemption policy. And we will continue to work with you and Legionnaires on the ground to identify those potential impacts and bring them to you and the VA as soon as possible.
I would appreciate that, and I would ask all of your members, if you know of cases, to bring them to me, because as I said, and I have personally been involved in at least 3, and I have the receipts because I have the letters that they received, and these were people answering the phones when a veteran calls. That crisis hotline has a 9-second response rate, and that is critically important. And Commander LaCourciere, what I actually say about homeless veterans is any time a veteran must lay down his head on the streets that he defended, we are all dishonored. Thank you for your sentiment. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Congressman McGarvey, you are recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. We are seeing drastic, massive cuts right now at the VA. 1,400 people fired this week. The VFW has spoken out against it. Policymakers have spoken out against it. Our veterans are speaking out against it. Because of the feared impact it is having on the services we must be providing the men and women who served us. Just last night, I had a telephone town hall, and a gentleman named Alan called in, served in the Army. He was at the VA getting health care, and one of the things he told me about, he said, the people here are scared. Morale is down. They don't know if they're going to have their jobs. We made a promise to take care of our veterans. We have to fulfill that promise. I want to make sure we do. We will not back down on this committee. I want to ask you guys a few questions related to the workforce at the VA. Commander, do you have numbers on how many veterans work at the VA?
440,000.
Mr. Garvey, thank you very much for that question. I'm going to turn, I believe it's approximately 400,000, but I'm going to turn that over to, I want you to have the honest answer. I want to turn it over to Director Cole.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commander, and thanks, sir. I don't have a specific exact number that I can give you right now, but I believe it's in the neighborhood of 360,000.
Amazing. Do you know what percentage that is of VA's workforce?
VA's total workforce is 469,000 employees. That has increased from, I believe, about 49,000 in FY01. So significant increase.
A huge percentage of veterans work at the VA.
Yep.
We have not been able to track down a solid number for how many veterans have lost their jobs in these mass firings. Do you guys have that number?
We do not, sir.
Okay. About how many military spouses have lost their jobs in these firings? We haven't been able to track that down either.
No, sir.
Right, and part of the reason we don't know this is because of how this was done. There was no impact analysis done before they laid off all these people, no impact of how it would impact our service members currently with their military spouses, our veterans, and the people we're supposed to serve. We got 30 seconds left. I told you about what I'm hearing from my veterans in Louisville, Kentucky. What are you all hearing from your members about the impact this is going to have?
Thank you, sir. I'll just go ahead and follow up. I think the lack of clarity, which we did discuss with the Secretary in our meeting yesterday, and then with VA officials on Monday from all 4 administrations, that we need more clarity on who specifically is being impacted, and we encourage them to proactively message with us, the committees, and veterans in the country about those impacts. But as of now, we don't have that information.
Yeah, that was a very nice way to say that we're afraid this might be screwing our veterans. So let us know we're going to keep that from happening. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Congressman, we had 7 people fired at our Veterans Hospital in Maine yesterday. 5 were veterans. 5 of the 7 were veterans. So be clear, when you hear 1,000 people laid off, 300 or 400 of those are veterans.
Representative Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I began my remarks yesterday by expressing my grave concern about the ongoing assault on the civil service and VA employees. Shortly after yesterday's hearing, I learned that these mass firings hit Minneapolis VA, which serves over 100,000 veterans in the Twin Cities and surrounding areas. We're talking about public servants with records of strong job performance, many of whom are vets themselves, who now find themselves out of a job, all without notice or cause. Many of the VA employees who were just laid off in Minneapolis are veterans themselves, men and women who made the honorable decision to serve their fellow vets even after they completed their own military service. I find it hard to believe that these mass firings won't affect the care and services that our veterans have earned. Commander, I'm grateful to you and your fellow Legionnaires for being here today. I was honored to meet with a strong delegation from Minnesota yesterday. I'm grateful to them for traveling all this way to the halls of Congress. I want to thank you for sharing your stories and for your advocacy on behalf of your fellow veterans. Last year, Hennepin County, which is Minnesota's largest county by population, achieved functional 0 status for veterans homelessness. I'm incredibly proud of my home community for making such significant strides. Thank you. That does deserve a round of applause. I'm really proud of my home community for making such significant strides in caring for our veterans, and it gives me hope that Minnesota can be a model for the whole country in the fight to end veteran homelessness. Commander, I'm wondering how federal investments in housing and other wraparound services will help to fight the veteran homelessness crisis.
Dr. Morrison, thank you very much for that question. Increasing the number of HUD-VASH vouchers that are made available, and working with SSVF, that alone can impact and reduce our veteran homelessness. It also give them the peace of mind that the government is actually working with them. What I found, I myself, and I'm going to share a personal, very quick, and I'll make it quick. Outside of the American Legion, I'm currently on year's leave of absence, but when I return back to Connecticut after my year, I go back to working for the Soldiers, Sailors, and Marines Fund, which is a fund that the American Legion handles for the state of Connecticut, which is temporary financial assistance. And what we find out traditionally towards the latter part of the year, in the fall time, which is a critical time of the year, now we're starting to fall short on the availability of the HUD-VASH vouchers and everything. So, in my opinion, to answer your question directly, if there's a way we can increase, maybe based on veteran population, on the states and everything.
Thank you, that's helpful. Just really quickly, I was excited to see in your testimony you made reference to the outstanding work happening at VA Vet Centers. As you know, they provide a variety of counseling and transitional services, but in a more relaxed, less clinical environment. There's a vet center in my district in Anoka, Minnesota, and I'm hopeful that we can expand these services across our entire state. Can you share just briefly your perspective about why Vet Center's community-based approach to support services is so successful?
Again, Dr. Morrison, thank you very much for that question. Right away, I'm going to turn that over to our Chairman of Veterans Employment and Education, Matt Jabot.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Of course. Just how the importance of vet centers and why their community-based approach to support services is so successful.
I'm sorry about that, Dr. Morrison, my mistake. I was looking at the wrong chairman. I'm going to turn that over to our chairman, Jay Bowen.
Thank you, Commander. And thank you, ma'am, for the question. We do appreciate it. And as you stated, the vet centers are critical to veterans' care because they do operate in a more relaxed environment. And once you put the veteran in a relaxed environment, they're more apt and more likely to then open up and talk about the issues that they have. And once they talk about the issues and it gets out on the table, then we can identify a fix.
Thank you so much. And before I finish, I just want to say, as the wife of an Army combat veteran and a proud American, I want to thank every one of you in this room for your service.
So I will apologize that I had to leave at the beginning. I normally ask questions first, but we didn't save the best for last, but I'm going to be the one that asks the last questions, if that's all right. Commander, look, I'm very grateful for the American Legion's past support of my bill, H.R. 1041. Now, that's the Veterans Second Amendment Protection Act. Is the legislation something that the American Legion will continue to support?
Chairman Boss, thank you very much for that question. The American Legion, we have and we always will stand by the Constitution of the United States of America.
Thank you, that. Raw. So one other bill I've got out there is H.R. 740, the Veterans Access Act of 2025, which expands access to community care. Can you explain why the veterans need access to community care?
Chairman Boss, I'm going to turn that question over to Director Cole.
Thank you, Commander. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think over the years since the Phoenix waitlist scandal in 2014 and then the passage of the Veterans Choice Act and the passage of the Mission Act, community care has expanded because more veterans have become eligible under the regulatory guidance to be able to get an appointment within a certain time or distance. In a lot of areas, the VA is unable to provide that care in-house. We have seen credible evidence of VA administrators at the VISN and the VAMC level basically disregard some of those access standards and canceling appointments or canceling existing referrals, shortening the timeline of authorization. So the Access Act, the codification of access standards would take the VA's ability to do that out if the veteran and their provider decide it is in their best medical interest to go seek care in the community. So that, number one. But number two, the very important provision is oftentimes we hear from veterans across the country that they're happy with the care that they get at VA, they're happy with the quality, they're happy with the care they get at their community provider. They're frustrated with the referral process and the scheduling process and the hurdles they have to overcome and the communication between those community providers. So the second important provision in that bill would seek to streamline the scheduling process, which is why we reviewed it and supported it.
Thank you. Thank you. Real quickly, Commander, before my time runs out here and we go to our closing, I just want to let you know that I know you brought up the TAP programs. Remember, I'm a veteran that left the Marine Corps in 1983. Back then, we did get a TAP. It was a TAP from the Colonel saying, hey, nice to see you. Thank you for your service. But we are, on our committee, wanting to work very closely with HASC, with because it is under DOD's control, the scheduling, but we need to get that coordinated. And the sad thing is that like a VA, if you've seen one TAP program, you've seen one TAP program. They need to be uniform. We need to be able to get the information to our veterans so as they separate, that they know what's available to them for every issue, but mostly so that they know what mental health issues are available to them so that we don't lose them in being part of that, whether it's 17 or 21 or whatever that number is. One is too many with veteran suicide. So we make that commitment. We'll be working on that with you. So with that, I now want to recognize the ranking member, Mr. Cano, for his closing statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the Access Act, I just want to say that it does nothing to enhance the shortage and understaffing at community care coordination offices among the many, many VMACs across the country. And part of the bottleneck with the referral process is the understaffing of those offices, and I don't know that they were exempt from the firing or the freeze that your organization inquired about with senior career officials. What I'm troubled by is the acceptance from these career officials about the whole policy. Was the question asked, was there an analysis performed, not only about the impact, about the necessity for these firings? What was the purpose of these firings? Waste, fraud, and abuse is bandied about as a justification, but where is the justification prior to these firings? It seems to me they occurred willy-nilly and indiscriminately. And the evidence is in the many, many people, many veterans that have answered our survey about, and VA employees generally who've replied to our survey. And I would urge that a similar survey be done by your own organization about the veterans who have been fired. I would assert that there's no credible justification. Waste, fraud, and abuse is just an excuse that has been put out there. In fact, the very people who are responsible for waste, fraud, and abuse investigations were the first people fired by this administration. They fired the Inspector General, who has held tough investigations against both Republican and Democratic Inspector Generals. I've just reviewed some reports from the Inspector General on President Biden that were not, President Biden's VA secretary, that were not very flattering. So it's not credible to me that waste, fraud, and abuse motivated these mass firings at VA. Now, Mr. Chairman, before I end, I wanted to say I'd like to share something. Yesterday and today, you've accused my Democratic colleagues and me of fear-mongering, and you say that you're not aware of any direct effects on patient care due to VA's reckless firing of 2,400 employees and counting. Well, you've repeatedly invited folks to share examples with you, so I'd like to share one with you now. On Monday, 2 clinicians who performed mental health intake at the Cleveland VA Medical Center were dismissed. This is already wreaking havoc on patient care and patient safety at that facility. Additionally, prosthetics and supply chain staff have been fired. This directly affects patient care because these employees play a critical role in procuring the medical devices veterans need and equipping surgical suites with necessary supplies. I met with this particular employee, fired employee yesterday. They were in attendance at the hearing, and they also indicated that it could mean that veterans who need prosthetics could be, the supply for them could be delayed. Now, this is a very urgent matter, and I don't think we can sit around and pretend to believe senior officials who are under duress by the senior leadership who tell you, they're comfortable with the exemptions, and that should be accepted at face value. There's prima facie evidence that I'm presenting to you now that you should face that with skepticism. I will not stop talking about these mass firings until I get answers. And so far there are no answers. And everything that Senator Tillis brought up, the information is not forthcoming. It is not forthcoming. Mr. Chairman, will you commit to VA, to us, that we get from VA the details of these firings to ensure, as you have repeatedly claimed, that these firings will not affect patient care? Because my staff and I are already hearing about such instances, and I hope that we'll have a hearing about these firings specifically.
We will take it under advisement.
I don't hear a commitment.
I will take it under advisement. I have actually been meeting with the Secretary, know what the conversations have been, also know that each person that's been let go, in their letter, it says that they can appeal to their supervisor immediately to find out if that there are, and then I would ask those who have come before you. I mean, you've all stuck on your talking points very, very, very well, and I appreciate that. But that being said, to say there's not waste, fraud, and abuse
I don't do
in the
talking points,
agency.
Mr. Chairman. That's an insult.
Well,
I say what I say.
apologize if you feel it is an insult, Senator, because I'm going to tell you something. I've listened to it over and over again. We're 1 month into this administration. That was sent a clear message to try to cure the problems that exist in government today. Even the former administration admitted that they overhired after COVID. Now we need to make sure that we are streamlining, doing the job that is necessary, and we do have the commitment from the Secretary that no one's services are going to be lost. You as a VSOs, please come forward to me and tell me if those are done. You obviously mentioned that you met with the Secretary yesterday. As this goes on, we are 1 month into this. I appreciate that you have an opportunity to argue the political point. I am telling you that I will stand for veterans like I always have. I will continue to stand for veterans. I've always stood for veterans.
I do not hear you. I do not hear you.
And
saying
I have
you will
just
commit
told
to-
you we will take it under advisement, Mr.
We'll take it under
Ranking
advisement,
Member.
but we do not hold a hearing on 14,000, 2,400 people
We
who
are
were
1 month
fired.
into this, and I don't know which things to admit to because as of yet, we're still studying it ourselves. And so with that, I will tell you that I will take it under advisement, and my position as chair, I will do that. You don't need to tell me how to take my position as chair. I didn't do that when you were chair, and I don't appreciate it in front of this group, you doing it now. So let me explain this to you. It is amazing to me that during this time, you're bringing up this, but when we had sexual situations occurring in our VA where they were running a sex room, you said nothing about firing those. When we had superintendent, when we had, no,
Mr. Chairman,
when we, no, I'm going
Mr.
now,
Chairman,
thank you.
you held a hearing. I advised you to allow the internal investigations to proceed with the
We have
Inspector
one
General.
other that
I
we had
did
a
not
hearing on.
hold- I did not.
And you did not bring up.
I did not subpoena one single official when I was chairman. When President Trump was president, you issued several subpoenas.
You're doggone right I did because the people need to know.
Well, I think the people need to understand
And
why
this
24
administration- this
individuals were
administration-
fired, 24,000 people were
And
fired.
this administration has been answering those questions
They have
not
They
only.
have not provided a single bit of information about why they
There
were
has
fired,
been, and if
why
you-
the justification.
And when you put up the letter yesterday, you put half the letter up. You did not put the opportunity for the employee to do the appeals process. So I understand that you're concerned. I'm glad that you've got the platform. You're doing a great job of grabbing hold of that platform. My job is to make sure our veterans are taken care of, as it is yours. And we're going to do that.
Well, please hold a hearing. That's all I'm asking to do.
I understand that. With that, welcome to the VA committee that's so bipartisan. Look, I want to thank the American Legion and all the witnesses for being here today. We share your values, and I want to thank the audience members for coming in from every corner of this United States to be here today. Let me tell you, for purposes, when this panel's excused, if you would, because we know this room so well, all right, if you could go out that door while we're bringing the new panel in, because it just kind of helps the flow. Commander, I do want to say thank you. I do want to say thank you to each one of you and all my other, thank you, Legionnaires, and I thank you that I'm part of your organization. It's been a pleasure to serve you and will be continued to serve you, and we will work through any of the issues as they come forward. Thank you so much. You're excused.